and therefore that France would not fight. He called for champagne and summoned his chief of staff, von Moltke.
Now we need only wage war against Russia, so we simply advance with the whole army in the east.
But it was too late. Schlieffen's plan was in action. German patrols had already entered neutral Luxembourg. All eyes now turned on Britain, and still the Liberal government shrank from accepting the march of events. In desperation, Paul Combon turned to the Conservative opposition leaders.
Doesn't England understand what honor means?
Now honor and necessity were hand in hand. The next day, Germany presented her ultimatum to Belgium, demanding a passage for her troops. The Belgians had 12 hours to reply. It took far less time for them to make up their minds. King Albert spoke for his people.
Our answer must be no, whatever the consequences. Our duty is to defend our national integrity. In this we must not fail.
It had been a rainy day in London, damping alike for the great peace rally in Trafalgar Square and for the hotheads who wanted to cheer for war. When the news of the German ultimatum to Belgium arrived, however, the clouds of uncertainty began to pass away. Telegrams were sent out calling up army reservists and territorials. The opposition leaders urged the government to take up arms.
Insensibly, during this Sunday, without any fresh news, some nameless factor began to work. The horrors of war might be less insupportable than the horrors of peace. There were dissentients, but the majority did not want to argue. Argument never makes headway against conviction, and conviction takes no part in argument because it knows.
Knowing was everything. Knowing the worst and knowing what to do. On August the 3rd, Sir Edward Grey addressed the House of Commons.
I ask the House, from the point of view of British interests, to consider what may be at stake. If France is beaten to her knees, if in a crisis like this we run away from obligations of honor and interest as regards the Belgian Treaty, we should, I believe, sacrifice our respect and good name and reputation before the world, and should not escape the most serious and grave economic consequences.
The House of Commons rose to him, the country united behind him. It was a moment of distasteful triumph for Grey. When a Foreign Office official congratulated him on his speech, he raised his arms and crashed his fists down on the table.
I hate war. I hate war.
God grant we may not have a European war thrust upon us, and for such a stupid reason too. No, I don't mean stupid, but to have to go to war on account of tiresome Serbia beggars belief.
But war was now a fact. The French ambassador in St. Petersburg witnessed the imperial proclamation to the Russian people.
I got to the Winter Palace Square, where an enormous crowd had congregated with flags, banners, icons, and portraits of the Tsar. The Emperor appeared on the balcony. To those thousands of men on their knees at that moment, the Tsar really was the autocrat appointed of God, the military, political, and religious leader of his people, the absolute master of their bodies and souls.
Germany declared war on France on August the 3rd. The Kaiser had already addressed his people.
This is a dark day and a dark hour. The crisis which is forced upon us is the result of an envy which for years has pursued Germany. The sword is being forced into my hand. This war will demand of us enormous sacrifice in life and money. But but we shall show our foe what it means to provoke Germany.
The French declaration of war followed at once.
It was a lovely afternoon in Paris, but what was the matter? That was the second woman hurrying by who seemed to be crying. Motors whizzed past, driven by men with strained, set faces. No taxi driver would stop. They were all returning to the garages. We turned. There, on the walls of the Palais Bourbon, still wet from the bill-poster's brush and shining in the sun, was the order for the general mobilization. It was to be war after all.
Britain's vigil was almost over. On August the 4th, the Prime Minister wrote in his diary,
"We got the news that the Germans had entered Belgium. This simplifies matters. So we sent them an ultimatum to expire at midnight, requesting that they would respect Belgian neutrality. The whole thing fills me with sadness."
While the hours ran out in London, crowds gathered in front of the German embassy and along the Mall. Expectation was in the air, an electrical excitement.
The whole crowd, solid up to the railings of the palace, was silent, save for a murmur as of bees in a hive. Then suddenly, away to the right, came the singing of the national anthem, and from away to the left, a roar of cheering. Like great winds blowing when they listed, these storms rose and died and broke out afresh.
The hours struck. The ultimatum ran out. Standing at a window overlooking St. James's Park, watching lamplighters in the summer dusk, Sir Edward Grey pronounced the obituary of peace.
The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime.